Welcome to Breakneck through the Bible 2018-2019 class number 1. It's an introduction to the Chumash this week, and next week actually we'll get into the Chumash. We'll do a little bit of it as well. Probably tonight we'll get into it just a little bit, but that's we're glad that everyone is here, and we're excited. Okay, so now. The plan for the class is to read the entire Chumash, okay? And so this is we're going to be using the stone Chumash as a text for it. It's a good thing to have your own stone Chumash, as what we will be doing is that you should be taking notes, highlights. Your job is to wear out your Chumash, okay? It means to use your Chumash until you wear it out. Okay, and so we're not allowed to doodle in the Chumash, right? You can't make funny faces or all those markings that you put inside of it. But if you're writing notes, Torah thoughts, you want to be able to look back and remember something. You are more than fine to write in the Chumash. Okay, so you're allowed to write Torah thoughts. Just can't doodle in it. Okay, you can't mark it up. But remember, the Torah is meant to be studied and learned and used. And it's supposed to be our everyday, every life, every year companion. So if you want to make sure that you're going to get we'll call it a dog-eared copy. Okay, right? We want you to be able to take it and to really to use it and to really use the Chumash well. Okay, so make sure to go ahead and to get it so that you can use it well. Okay.
You mean we can highlight and take
notes. Highlight it. Take notes in it. Really, just go ahead and to take notes and make sure that you use it. Okay, so that's why you want your own chumash. We have some chumashes if you forget yours at home that you can use it, but you're not going to be able to really to get into it to own it. You know what I'm saying? Like to really to learn it. Okay.
Pink highlights is okay?
Yeah, pink, even pink highlights okay. Where pink, you can use pink, you can use blue, you can use yellow, green, whatever other color highlights you like. I think for the Shabbos project you could use pink.
Black?
Black. No, you can't use black because then you cross it out. Okay, only right. That's you can't do that. It's funny, the Jewish people have a sad history of our books being blacked out. Actually, I remember as a kid, I grew up in Bentzi, and Rabbi Kamenetsky, one of the great sages of the generation, actually had a shul in our neighborhood. And I remember going by there once, and actually they had old Gemaras, and I remember opening them up and seeing lines blacked out. Why? Because the rulers of the basically Christian rulers did not appreciate some of the lines in the Talmud, and so they went and they were censored, and so they were censored out actually with black lines. Actually, it was it's pretty impressive that they actually were and in fact we even have like some lines in davening, right, like that have made a comeback in recent years thanks to ArtScroll, but that were censored out by the by the censors. They were not happy with what was being said in the Talmud, so they.
In New Jersey, they were censoring?
No, not in America. But these Talmuds were from Europe.
Oh, they came from Europe.
They came from Europe. They're just quite fascinating. Okay, so now also, and this is pretty scary, but I'm going on tape as well. We'll be Facebook Live as well as you have an audio recording, and the point is that I will be held accountable for what I say. If in 3 years from now you're still in class and we come to and say, wait a second, Rabbi, didn't you in week 1 say this? Yes, that is, I could be held accountable for that. Right? It does. Right? The truth doesn't change, and so therefore, you ask me on any time, any place, and if you go to another class that I give, okay, you could go and you can ask me questions from that as well that might cross-reference some of the things that we learn here. So it's serious business about making sure to have it, to really to learn it. Now, if another data rabbi says it, so then you can have a lot of fun, because then you can go to the other data rabbi and say, wait a second, you're saying X and Rabbi Epstein said Y. And then you come to me and you say, Rabbi Epstein, you said Y, but Rabbi so-and-so said X. Right? Because, right, it's got to be, and so and then you kind of have to just move out of the way and let us fight it out and see what's going to happen. But so we're really well held accountable to it. This is not just convenient truth of whatever just happens to be convenient at the moment, right? The truths are always true forever. Okay, number 3 is challenge it. Ask questions on it, and go ahead and make sure that ask questions from it. Okay, now before we get really into this, I really just want to go around the room. If everyone could just introduce themselves, say your name, and what you're hoping to get out of the class. Okay, and just go around the room. We'll quickly just go around the room, take a minute, just so that everyone can get to know each other. That's why I've given out name tags. The name tags are not for you. I assume you know your name, so that's okay. But they're for other people that are here, so that if they see you, right? Because by week number 3, everyone's going to be embarrassed because they've already seen you twice and you don't remember their name. This way, if you have a name tag, just write it nice and big, and so therefore people can read it and say, "Oh, hi, Robert," and right, it's all right. So we're going to save people that embarrassment. Maybe once every 6 months we'll make you go ahead, and we'll let you go ahead, and we'll give you a the name tag so that everyone can go ahead to go ahead and just to go ahead and stick it on. So, Sherry, you wrote your name nice, and why don't you start with you?
I'm Sherry. Do you want the last name too?
Sure.
Okay, Harpads. And I'm hoping to learn more history and halacha, actually.
Okay.
That's what I'd like to know.
Okay.
Here you go. My name is Robert Gold, and I'm a beginner.
Okay. So am I. You're in the right class. Okay. There's a vast amount of knowledge to learn. So we've been beginners for a very long time. All right. Boris.
I'm Boris. And I'm trying, and I hope to get out of this wonderful class under Rabbi Epstein, wisdom.
Okay.
My name's Aaron Salter, and same thing, trying to get Rabbi Epstein's wisdom the next year.
Torah's wisdom.
My name is Benjamin Epstein, and I'm trying to go over the Chumash for the first time, cover to cover.
I'm with him. I want to finish this in 5 years.
What's your name?
Norm Katz.
Norm Katz. Okay. Good.
I'm Akiva with my wonderful family.
Okay. Good. Okay.
You don't have any goals?
I don't have any goals.
Alrighty.
I'm Bracha Ashley. I wanted to go over the Chumash again, with the correct version.
Okay.
I'm Hannah, and I want to remember some things I conveniently forgot when I was a kid.
I'm Esther, the grandmother. I'm interested to study more on commerce.
Okay. Good.
I'm Simone Haddad, and I would like to understand the Chumash.
Okay.
I'm Alicia Carrasco, and I would like to engage more in the learner service.
Okay.
And have more confidence to answer your questions.
There's always one like that.
I am Flor, and I would like to hear the truth. That's why I'm here.
Okay. Okay. Frankie?
Frankie Xavier. I'm here to learn more Torah. As the Rabbi said in the Talmud, when you learn the Torah, God is talking to you. So we fed our body with the meal or whatever, but also is to feed my soul with the spiritual meals, the learning, study the Torah, and get a lot of wisdom from my Epstein.
Okay.
I'm Nancy Maranzanbaum, and really the wisdom from the Torah and Rabbi Epstein. This is the reason that I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Okay, now I'm Rabbi Epstein, and I'm here to go through the Chumash cover to cover. That's why I'm here. And I want you to know, every time I learn it, the Talmud says, how much have I learned from my rabbis, even more from my studies partners, but the most from my students. Right? And so actually by learning and teaching, and people asking questions, right? It's a course of Torah study to get to a place of being able to learn more and have more insights. And so it's always there's every time you learn. I actually was studying with my son this morning, and then, like something that I've read 100 times and now read it, and something else just kind of just like stuck in my mind. Like that's interesting. It's a good question, right? But you just notice things every time you go over it. So we're big into this. Okay, so the plan is to read the Chumash cover to cover. Okay, so every week when we stop, the next week we're going to pick up from where we ended off. Right? Okay, right. We're going to end off from where we started off. And I'll tell you where the idea came from this class, and it's just actually it's a funny story. So we'll try to keep you entertained a little bit and share with you some stories. The story took place probably around 15 years ago or so, maybe 20. We were still in the dining room of my house in the other room. Okay, and what happened was one Shabbos afternoon we were sitting enjoying our Shabbos meal, and all of a sudden I see these two young boys. Not young boys, probably 18, 20-year-olds, dressed in black pants and white shirt, walking up to my door. And I didn't recognize them. And then I looked a little closer, and I saw that they had parked their bikes on the end of my sidewalk, and were walking up my walk. And actually, there was some people in the room that said, "Oh, Rabbi, this is so much fun. Why don't we invite them and have a little debate? Why don't we have a little discussion about the Torah?" And I said, and I was going, yes, no, maybe so. Should I do it? Should I not do it? Kind of it's like, it's got to be a little careful here. And so we live in a Jewish neighborhood, and so I didn't want them really spending too much time with people with mezuzahs. So I figured if they came to one house with a mezuzah, we gave them a hard time to leave the other houses alone. So I come to the door, and I said, "How can I help you?" I said, we wanted to talk to you about the Bible. I said, finally somebody wants to talk to me about the Bible. I'm so glad you're here. I was looking for some conversation. And so it's like 110 degrees outside. They were outside and I was inside. And they said, "Do you mind if we come in?" I said, No, sure, come on in. And so they came in. So I said, okay, guys, let me ask you a question. I've been really dying to ask you this question. Like it's something that's something that I think, it's a great question. I said, do you happen to keep kosher? So they said to me, "What is kosher?" I said, like in the Bible, Leviticus chapter 13, right? Leviticus chapter 13, right? Of foods that we can eat and foods that we can't eat. And so I said, "Do you keep kosher?" They said, "Well, no, we're not familiar with it." I said, "Okay, so let me ask you a question." I said, I have, I said, "I'll tell you why you guys don't keep kosher." I said, "Leviticus, it's in the Bible. Don't you keep the Bible?" So they said, "Yeah." I said, why don't you keep kosher?" I said, "I'll tell you why you guys don't keep kosher." I said, "Because Jesus is purported to have said, it's more important that what comes out of your mouth than what goes into your mouth." I said, "So you canceled the laws of kosher, right? Because it's more important what goes out than what goes in." Okay? I said, but I have a different problem. Because in Deuteronomy 13, right, it's a very interesting chapter where it talks about a false prophet. And it's very interesting. I said, in Deuteronomy 13, it says that if a prophet or a dreamer of dreams comes and does signs and wonders, and they come about, I said, like feeds 5,000 people from a bucket of fish, walks on water. I said, and then he tells you to change anything that is in the Torah. I said, the Torah says that's not good. And you got to get rid of such a prophet. You have to, right? That's not a prophet. That's considered a false prophet. Right? I said, so it's actually fascinating, right? Because we go ahead, the way we judge whether prophecy is true or not, right, is we go ahead and we, if you change what is in the Torah, right? A prophet is never allowed to change anything that is in the Torah. Okay, they could change it on a one-time occasion, but they cannot change it right in a permanent uproot a rule in the Torah. Right? They can't do. Right? Then what is the job of a prophet? Very fascinating. What is the job of a prophet then? Not to make new rules. So why do we need prophets?
To reinforce them.
Oh, so really, right, to be our cheerleaders, right? Right, to go ahead and to kind of, right, to reinforce them. And again, prophecy stopped roughly 1,000 years after we got the Torah. So prophecy stopped roughly 2,300 years ago. Right? So prophecy stopped roughly 2,300 years ago. 2,300 years ago, prophecy was done. And now we have rabbis instead who are supposed to be, right, those people to help us to, right, inspire us to keep the Torah. So I said to them, I said, guys, I said, I really appreciate, studying some Torah with you. But let me ask you a question. Have you ever read the Bible cover to cover? And I got this long, pregnant pause. One guy was inspecting his shoes. The other guy was inspecting the ceiling. And I said to them, and finally one of them said, yeah, parts of it. I said, okay. And what about you? I read it a long time ago. So I said, fantastic. I'll tell you what. Why don't you guys go home, read the Bible, and then come back and we can have a conversation about this. But till you've read it, it's like hard to have a conversation with you guys. And we sent them along the way. They walked out. They left. I sat down and I said to myself, well, how many Jews have read the Bible cover to cover? Right? And hence was born Breakneck Through the Bible. Okay? That was where the idea of Breakneck Through the Bible came from, right, from this encounter. Right? Then actually it's quite fascinating. Actually there's one of the laws, right, is actually we're supposed to read the Torah every year, actually cover to cover. Right? And so kind of like, so I thought like, hey, that's a great idea for a class, Breakneck Through the Bible, and hence we are here, Breakneck Through the Bible. Okay, so since this is a Jewish class, I'm going to ask you all a question. Okay, I want you to take your handouts and turn to the second page of your handout. Okay, not the cover page. Turn to the second page of the handout. Okay, and there is a one question quiz. Okay, one question quiz. Alrighty, and the question is as follows. I'll read it for you just in case you can't read it. This is the question. And for all our people online, it goes as follows. Which of these books is our book? If you turn the page, there's actually a page, right? There's a page that looks like, I'm going to hold it up, Robert, and right, looks like that, right? So it's, right? Which one of these books is our book? Choice A is the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible. B is the New Testament. C is the Book of Mormon. D is the Quran. E is none of the above. And F is all of the above. Okay, so I'm going to give you 30 seconds now. And go ahead and pick one of these answers. Okay, you get to pick one of these answers. If anyone needs a pen, I have an extra pen here. Go ahead and you can circle one of them. And no, you don't have to write your name on top of them, right? But go ahead and just circle one of those answers. Aaron, need your pen?
Yes, please.
Who else needs a pen? I can give it. I've got an extra. Who else needs a pen?
Okay, I think we're good.
You have an extra? Yeah. Thank you. I don't have to borrow anymore.
Thank
well,
you.
You have to turn this way, but I will. This way, yeah, okay.
At the end of the night. How's that?
All righty.
Exactly, sure. I'm not going to chase tonight anyway.
Okay, so if you're done, put your pen down so know that you're done. If you're still thinking about it, take your time. This is not meant to be rushed or anything like this. This is meant to just take your time. Okay, so by a show of hands, again, we repeat the question. Which one of these books is our book? A, the Old Testament, the Jewish Bible. If you circled A, please raise your hand.
I circled it, but I have a
expect you to circle it. You would know it.
Okay, good. Okay, put your hands down. Thank you. If you think it's B, the New Testament, please raise your hand. Okay, now C, if you think it's the Book of Mormon. No takers. D, the Quran. Okay, E, none of the above. Okay, and F, all of the above. Okay. Chana, are you on F?
I'm not. I'm hitting it.
Okay, okay, good. Okay, good. Okay. So, Robert, you said none of the above. Everyone seems to say A. And Robert, you said none of the above. Why did you say none of the above?
Because it says the Old Testament.
Okay, so the Jewish Bible, I mean by this book.
Oh, you mean this book?
Yeah, this book. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The whole
Okay, you can change your answer.
It's on the shelf over here. It'll be black.
You could change your answer.
The Tanakh and the oral law.
You can
Rabbi, because
yeah.
I was reading that the Christian call the Old Testament to their Bible, their Bible.
What?
I was reading somewhere that the Christian they call Old Testament.
Right. That's what they do, right? Because they have the all,
this
right?
is not the Torah.
Right. They've all, right. Okay. So my answer is E, none of the above.
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you why.
What?
If you read the Torah, there is nothing in this book that you can understand without some sort of explanation.
Right.
There is no commandment that you can read without some sort of explanation. Right? You understand? Right? There is nothing.
That's why we got foot. No
So,
Torah, right?
so like for example, someone said, "Well, what it says? It says you shall not kill."
Murder.
So I said, "Really?" I said, "There's a translation: Thou shalt not kill, or Thou shalt not murder."
Thou shalt not murder.
I said, let's say somebody throws somebody off the Empire State Building, and somebody in the 50th floor leans out and cuts him in half. So then, who's the murderer?
They
the guy
both
on
are.
the top? You know, you can't say they both are, because if the first guy's a murderer, that means the person's dead. So how could you murder the dead person? So they can't do that. Scratch that. Okay, right? You got it? So who's the real murderer? Well, the real murderer, please stand up. Who are we going to prosecute? Right? Who killed him? Right? So it depends on the definition of murder. Could you turn off a heart-lung machine? Right? Is that murder? Is that not murder? Right? If you go to war and there's an enemy soldier coming, you're allowed to shoot them.
Yes.
Right? Is that killing or murder?
Killing.
Right? So everything needs a definition. There is nothing that you can understand just by reading it in the Torah. The only way for you to understand what is in the Torah is by having some sort of explanation. This explanation that this book came with, right, is what we call the oral law. Okay? The oral law was given to Moses at the same time as the written law was given. Right? Actually, it was given beforehand, even. It's kind of funny. Right? Okay? Right? The explanation of what the Torah means, when we got the Torah, we got the explanation that came with it as well. Okay?
So why does that make it not our book?
Because it's not because it's only half the book. Right? It's only, right? Understand, there's nothing in here that could be understood in it of itself, standing alone.
Wait a minute. The way you worded it, which is our book, you didn't say whether it's a complete book.
Okay. Alrighty. You give yourself half a credit.
Yeah.
You made me doubt myself. I changed my answer.
Yeah.
See,
I said, how did Robert know it?
See how much of a beginner I really am?
Right, it's okay, but you understand what I'm trying to get across, right? Understand there's something called the written law, there's something called the oral law. You need the oral law. If you don't have an oral law, you can't have a written law, right? And so therefore, right, the written law all by itself does not work, right? No mitzvahs can be understood, right, without some sort of explanation, right? You got it without some sort of explanation. And so therefore that explanation has to be given, right? It has to be given somewhere. That was passed down orally. It was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. He spent 40 days and 40 nights there 3 times, right? It was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. And after it was given to Moses on Mount Sinai, then it was passed down. It was passed down orally for roughly 1,000 years. Actually, it was passed down orally for more than 1,000 years. It gave me like roughly 1,500 years, right? Till a great sage named Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, Rabbi Judah the Prince, roughly year 150 of the Common Era. So only like 1850 years ago is when he started to write it down, and kind of wrote bullet points, what we call the Mishnah. That's that book that you have, right? That's the Mishnah. He broke it down into 6 orders and into 63 books. Okay, and that's the Mishnah, and then that lasted for roughly 300 years. At which point in time, the Jerusalem Talmud is written roughly 200 years later, roughly year 350 of the Common Era. All the sages in Israel got together and wrote it together, and then the Babylonian Talmud was written roughly 100 years later by Rav Ami and Rav Asi, right? And they went ahead and they codified, right, the Babylonian Talmud.
Rav Ashi, I think of Ravina, wasn't it?
Could be, right? And so what happened was they went ahead and they went and they codified the Babylonian Talmud, and that sort of became our oral law. Okay, and that's the source of our oral law. So the good news is you come to class tonight, and you come and you sit here with me, or really with any of the other data rabbis, and at that point in time you were getting the oral law that is given together with the written law, right? And so to try to understand the written law without the oral law is something that is quite impossible. Okay, and it's something that it just doesn't work. You can't get what the answer is. Right, and so another example. Okay, any of you heard Humpty Dumpty?
Yeah. Humpty Dumpty?
Yeah. What was Humpty Dumpty?
An egg.
An egg. Okay. Who thinks Humpty Dumpty was an egg?
He looked like an egg.
He looked like an egg. Everyone saw him as an egg. It's simple, right?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, now.
He was a big round guy.
A big round guy. He was an egg. Everyone knows Humpty Dumpty was an egg. Yet I'm going to ask you, how do you know Humpty Dumpty was an egg? If you think about it, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Does it say anywhere that he was an egg?
No. We heard it.
So that is, again, you can make Humpty Dumpty a vase, a glass vase. That would have the same thing, right? Yet Humpty Dumpty is an egg. We all know Humpty Dumpty is an egg. There's an oral law that comes with it, right? How do we know an A is an A? Right? So the oral law, right, is that it tells us what it is. Right? And in fact, it's actually quite fascinating. I love the people that come and say to me, well, Rabbi, I just read the Torah and then I understand what it means.
Oh, yeah, right.
And those are my favorite people. So I say to them, I say, really? I said, well, how do you know where to read it? I said, if you look in the Torah, there are no vowels, and there are no periods, and there are no sentences. I said, so let me ask you a question. For example, you think it says, lo sirtzach, you shall not murder. That's not what it says. It says, lo tirtzach. No. Murder.
Right.
And the next one I like even better. No. Adultery. Right? You go ahead. I said, how do you know it says you shall not murder? How do you know it says you shall not commit adultery? It does. If you look in the Torah, there are no apostrophes, right? There's nothing that's there. And so then at that point in time, right, how do you even know how to read it? So the only way you could actually even read it at all is because you're relying on the oral law. So really what you're doing is you're picking and choosing which parts of the oral law you want to follow. That's okay, if you want to live your life like that. But just don't say it's from the Torah, because that's not being intellectually honest. Right, you're following? Right, you're going ahead, right? Yeah. So you need to come on the oral law. That's the only way to even read it. Yeah. Right, you can't even go ahead and write, where the sentences end, where they don't. In fact, it's quite fascinating if you take a look. Right, if you take a look in the Chumash, it's actually interesting. It says you can't cook, you can't cook a kid in its mother's milk. Right? Does anyone know how you write mother? How do you write milk in Hebrew?
Chalav.
Chalav. Anyone know how you spell the word chalav?
Ches lamed beis.
Ches lamed beis. What else does the word ches lamed beis spell?
Chalev.
Chalev. What is chalev?
Fat. It's a hot fat.
Right? So it says you shall not. Maybe why do people say you shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk? You're reading it wrong. He said you should not cook a kid in its mother's fat.
It's the oral law that
Right,
tells
you're
you.
following? Right? And right, this is a sort of not eating meat and milk together. Right? But you have to come across, right, to some sort of oral law. Right? Even just reading it, right, and from the verse itself, you can't even tell what it says. Right? And there's one verse actually it says both chalav and chalav together. Right? Even in the same verse. So you need to come across on the, or you have to come to an oral law. And once you come to the oral law, there's only one book that claims to be the oral law of the written Torah. And you know what that's called? The Talmud. Right? That's the only, right? So that's the only way to study or to learn the Torah. You got it?
The Talmud includes the Mishnah?
Yeah, the Talmud includes the Mishnah.
And the Gemara.
And the Gemara, right.
What is it, over 60 books in the track?
63 books.
63?
63 books.
What's a volume like that cost? That if you buy it from
Actually,
Torah?
Boris, if you're going to stand up, right there. You want to pass me?
I have just
Hold with two hands. You don't want to get hit with one of these. Right, you hope one of them don't. 63 books.
63.
So here, for example,
What's
here,
a volume like that cost?
it's actually probably like this. It probably is $500-$600 for the set. So here, if you take a look, right, this is okay. The inside here, right, the inside here is the Talmud, right, and then outside are commentaries, and then some more commentaries, right. A book like this is actually fascinating. I'll give you a little piece of little trivia, which is quite fascinating. This actually is the Talmud to that book that you have.
This one?
Yeah, actually interesting. Bring this home with you. Bring this home with you and say, okay, the rabbi upgraded you. So it's right. So what's fascinating, right? What's fascinating, right? You know who the largest printer
This
of
is a special edition that's so big.
yeah, it's called the Chassan edition. And see, that's the one like usually by the groom, right? The bride's father buys the groom, right, at the set of Talmud, right? And that's kind of that's the Talmud. It's called the Chassan Shas, right? It's like the big one. It's actually interesting. You should know, by the way. Do you know who today the largest language that the Talmud is written in?
Aramaic.
No.
Hebrew.
English.
Nope.
What?
Korean.
Is that right? There are a lot of Korean Jews?
No, they're not. There are really no Korean Jews. But
What's
the
the deal?
South Korean, the South Koreans
Uh-huh.
said, who are the smartest people in the world? It's the Jews.
Jews.
Why are
They
they
wanna
smart?
study. So they
Why are they
began to
smart?
study.
Because they studied the Talmud.
Yeah.
So what they did was they went and they translated the
Into
Talmud
Korean.
into Korean.
Yeah.
And every father, when his daughter gets engaged, buys his future son-in-law a Talmud in Korean.
Oh, how beautiful! You know what?
This
That's
is
a compliment to our race.
it's amazing. I don't know. I can't read Korean, so
Rabbi,
I didn't bother getting one.
Everybody that makes everybody that
What?
Rabbi,
We sell it here?
No, I don't know. I mean, I know.
Rabbi.
Go to Koreatown. I know it's
Rabbi, because the
Yeah?
Jews made the judicial system for the Christians throughout the world, the Supreme Court judges are very well versed not only in law but Torah.
No. So
They
okay,
study
don't say well versed.
Well,
They might know a little
study
bit. So anyway,
they know more than most.
so it's interesting. So what happens is you know who the greatest publisher of the Talmuds are?
Art Scroll today.
The American government. I'll tell you a story.
Oh my God!
In 1945,
Uh-huh.
when Americans came and freed the Jews from the concentration camps, so I think so I don't remember who it was. One of the rabbis at the time went over to the American Army and said, "You know, you're doing such an incredible job of taking care of all the Jews, right, who have lived through the Holocaust." He said, "But maybe just as important as taking care of their physical needs is taking care of their spiritual needs.
Yeah.
And they need the Talmud. You need to get them books. Okay, you need to give them books so that they can study Torah and revive their spirits. And the American Army went and ran a publication of Talmuds.
Oh my gosh.
I mean it's amazing. I mean you don't understand, like we're spoiled today. I mean, now forget about publishing, with sort of the post-publishing era. Do you know, before the printing press, what percentage of books in the world were Jewish books? Remember, we make up 0.000 right percent of the world.
Right.
We made up 90% of the written books in the world were Jewish books.
Right.
Right, and just a tremendous amount, because we're the only ones that read. We were the only ones that were literate across the board. Right. It's amazing. People even today you go to Arab countries, the people can't read. Where do they get their news from? They get it from their mosque. When they go on Fridays, they get it from the preacher. What's going on? Because they can't read.
Right.
So it's fascinating. So it comes right. You gotta read, right, the Torah, the oral law. You gotta have the oral law. That's the way it works. Okay. So what is the Torah? I'm going to keep on talking about the Torah. What is the Torah? So what is the Torah? So I'd like to. It's actually fascinating, right? Is that the Torah? What I like to think of it, the Torah is God's mind. Okay, the most physical form that God can take. Okay, that's if you think about the Torah, that this is, if we want to be able to understand the divine, we want to be able to understand God, right, to be able to connect to God, right, gotta go ahead and you gotta read the Torah, right? The most physical form that we can understand, right, of God is the Torah. Okay, right? God is very interesting. The Torah, I kind of say God, if you want to, the best explanation I can have of what God is I say the best. It's actually from Rabbi Kaplan. He says it could be compared to electricity. Could you see electricity?
No.
Could you grab hold of electricity?
No. You'd be killed if you
You'd be killed, right? But you can't grab it. There's nothing to grab.
Right.
But all you can do is you can see what it does.
Right.
And so what happens? So what happens is, so God is like that. You can't see it.
Yeah.
Right. We can't see God. God cannot take a physical form. Right. God cannot take a physical form. God cannot take a physical form. Right. That's interesting. Right, and that reason is because if you make God into physical, you're limiting God, and God by definition is limitless. Right, He has no limits, and so therefore at that point in time, right, God is limitless. So He cannot make Himself physical, and that's why there is no physical images in Judaism. Right, it means there's no right, and so therefore, right, God is infinite, and energy sort of is a good way to understand. Right, and understand what it is. And so what I tell people is actually, it's just quite fascinating, is if you take a look, right, if I tell you, you see that light? You see this table?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they the same thing?
No.
No, except I would tell you that there is a very great Jewish man, right, the great Jewish man named Einstein.
Yeah.
Actually wrote something, E equals mc squared.
My hero.
Right? E is energy, equals mass times the speed of light squared. So energy, light is energy.
Yeah.
Meaning that if you take it and you slow it down, right? Or you take mass and you accelerate it to the speed of light squared, you'll turn it into energy. Now, energy and the table, right, are the same. And so that's kind of when we talk about the Torah, we say God is this energy. Right, God is this energy, and what happens is that it goes ahead. The most physical form that God can take is the Torah, right? And so that's why, right, the way to connect to God, right, the most right is to go and to read the Torah. Yes.
So the first word of the Ten Commandments is that Anochi.
Yeah.
Isn't that stand for I, my soul, have I written and given?
I.
Ani,
yeah.
Anochi.
Right.
I.
Right. Nafshi.
Nashi.
And so ksiva, written.
And given.
Eaten. Okay.
That's some other rabbi told me.
Okay, good.
I
I
don't
hear
know,
that.
you know, if it's
Alrighty.
right or not.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm an illiterate, you know.
Alrighty. So that's what the Torah is. Okay. The Torah is the most physical, right? The most physical that we can get of God. Right, so you want to try to understand God, which really is all really what we're trying to do, right? Is understand what God wants from us, right? Why we're here in this world, what is the purpose here, right? So the most we can understand is reading the Torah. And by reading the Torah, we can go ahead and we can begin to understand and to relate, right, to God. And so just like, and that's why Kollel call it the Torah, the most physical form that we can begin to get of God. And it's actually quite fascinating, right? When was the Torah written?
5,779 years ago?
Nope.
5,000, no, I'm sorry, 2,000.
Oh, 3,232.
2,430 years ago. No, wait a minute.
3,330 years ago is when, okay, that is wrong. No, don't write that down.
That's when we got it.
Okay, 3,330 years ago was when the Jewish people came to Mount Sinai. Okay, but we didn't get the Torah on Mount Sinai. We didn't get the Blue Book on Mount Sinai. Okay, we got the commandments on Mount Sinai. We didn't get this book itself. Right, this book itself, Moshe wrote down the course of 40 years in the desert.
Right.
And at the end of those 40 years was when he actually presented each and every tribe with their own copy. Okay, and that was when we got the copy of it. But actually the Torah, God wrote the Torah down 973 generations before the world was created. Okay, God went ahead and 973 years went and wrote the Torah. Generations before the world was created. 973 years. Right?
973 generations.
973 generations before the world was created.
Times 100.
Generations of what? That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking a good question.
Yeah, really.
Right? The generations of what? I'm telling you what generations are. There's no world, there's no people. It says 973 generations. How do you know 973 generations? I'm going to tell you something quite fascinating.
I can't
Okay?
remember.
Alrighty. From the creation of Adam to the Jewish people getting the Torah on Mount Sinai. Does anyone know how many generations that was? 10 generations from Adam to Noah.
No.
10 generations from Noah to Abraham. That's 20. Then you have Isaac, Jacob, Levi, Kahas, Yitzhar, Amram, Moses. How many generations? 27 generations. What's 27 plus 973? 1,000. So it's 1,000 generations before the Jewish people got the Torah on Mount Sinai was when God wrote the Torah. And that's how I remember 973. It's what's quite fascinating, and this somebody just said a nice idea. Do you know we say the Hodul Hashem Ki Tov Ki Le'olam Chasto?
Yeah.
Right? And every Saturday morning we say it. Right? Do you know how many? Right? Thank God. Right? Ki Le'olam Chasto for His kindness endures forever. Do you know how many different stanzas because His kindness endures forever? There were 26 of them. Because He let the world exist for 26 generations when there was no Torah to keep it going. The Torah is the power pack of the world. If there is no Torah being learned, being studied, the world will cease to exist. The world will end just poof.
Yeah.
Okay? The world will cease to exist. And so what happens is, so we say, God, kindness is forever, that you actually kept the world going for 26 generations until along came the 27th generation, we got the Torah on Mount Sinai.
Right.
Why does God write the Torah right before He created the world? How did He write it, first of all? So black fire, white fire on top of black fire. Okay.
That's from the Zohar.
That's from the Zohar, right? Okay.
Never even heard.
And white fire on top of black fire, which is again all energy, right? Fire is energy,
Right.
And it's actually quite fascinating because I will show you something really super cool. Like if you want to be like class 201. So Robert, when you're stop being a beginner, you could begin doing this. I want you to read how to read the Torah. Read it the white letters or the black letters.
Black letters.
Black letters.
So you think so, huh?
Did you ever try reading it the white letters?
You can't see them.
Oh yeah, the background is the white letters.
Listen to me carefully. Did you ever try reading the Torah, the white fire, not the black fire?
No.
You ever see those cool logos that actually that they go ahead and that there's like logos inside the logos? Yeah. I think FedEx has an arrow in it. Yeah. Well, just So it's black fire on top of white fire, right? It's actually the energy that it's written on how it's written is kind of pretty cool. Alrighty, good. That's just some food for thought. Kind of just keep your minds busy a little bit. So why did he write the Torah before he created the world? Because as every good builder,
has a
before he builds a house, what does he do?
Has a plan.
He has a plan. What is the plan for this world?
Torah.
The Torah. The blueprint of the world is the Torah.
Right.
Meaning to understand, right, that everything in this world exists. It comes out through the Torah. It expresses itself through the Torah. Okay, it means that there's a way that the Torah has it for you to go ahead and to keep the world going. Right. So everything that is in the world exists so that we can keep some of the Torah. Right? It's an instruction manual of the Torah. And therefore, the entire Torah is infinite. We can spend our entire life being a beginner on one word, on one sentence, on one letter. We could spend our entire life learning it, and we still won't be finished. There's a great story actually that happened with Rabbi Fried. Rabbi Fried, the Dean of Data, actually is world-renowned. One of the books he wrote is a world-famous book. It's probably the preeminent book on that subject. Really? Called The Laws of the Second Days of the Holiday. Yeah, he's the world expert. Okay?
On the second day of the
on the second day of the holiday. Right? Okay, right. Like we just had a few holidays. We had the second days, right? Yeah, so he's a world expert on this topic. And what happened was, the way he used to do this was, he was living in Jerusalem, and there was a great sage in there, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Yeah. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach was one of the great sages of his generation. Actually, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, okay, right, who died in 1987, right, was the leading halachic decisive in the world. Yeah. When he died, right, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach became the leading halachic decisive in the world. And so from 1987 to 2000, I think, roughly, I think when he passed away, right, he was the leading halachic decisive in the world. Okay, Rabbi Fried, actually, what happened was that he lived in Sha'arei Chesed, one section of Jerusalem. His yeshiva was in another section of Jerusalem. And what happened was, every day somebody else had a turn, right, to drive him home. Yeah. And one day he heard a friend of his approach him and said, hey, the guy who usually takes him home on Wednesday, I'm not sure if it was Wednesday, I think it was Wednesday, can no longer do it. Do you want to do it? So he said, oh my gosh, do I want to do it? So he ran to Rabbi Auerbach and he says, listen, I hear the Rav needs a ride home. On Wednesdays, I'm going that way. I'd be honored to take him. So the Rabbi says, well, and I don't want to take you out of your way. I don't want to bother you. Don't worry about it. I could take public transportation. He said, no, I'm going there anyway. So every Wednesday, he used to go borrow his friend's car to pick up Rabbi Auerbach and to take him to Sha'arei, to take him there. And what happened was he had like 10 minutes or 15 minutes of time that Rabbi Auerbach, he had him as a private audience. And every day he used to write, and he used to prepare questions, right, once a week, and then he spent the rest of the week writing down the answers, right, and coming back with more questions, and that was the way that he wrote the book. There's actually only a couple books that actually the Shlomo Zalman Auerbach is considered, like actually that he wrote it. This is one of the books. Okay, and so what happened was, so he printed the book, it was great, and so what happened was, so Rabbi Fried kept on asking questions about the second day, because the other questions just kept on coming up. And so Rabbi Auerbach said to him, he says, why do you keep on asking me about these questions? He says, I want to get all the questions answered. So Rabbi Auerbach says to him, he says, you don't understand. If you and your children and your grandchildren spend their entire lives just researching this one topic, you still won't get all the ends. Move on and learn something else. That was this idea, right? The Torah is infinite. Why is it? Because almost is you're getting back close to the God. So you're just getting more and more information, right? And so the Torah is infinite. Okay, that's important to know. The Torah is infinite. Now, the Torah is also one of the greatest books that it can be understood on many different levels. Okay, the Torah can be understood on many different levels, meaning the 5-year-old who reads it has to be able to understand it, right? The 10-year-old who reads it has to be able to understand it. The 20-year-old, the 30-year-old, the 50-year-old, the 80-year-old who's still reading it still has to understand it. So it's written on the book. This book is written on many, 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 many different levels, right? I'll just tell you something. My son, my 11-year-old son, came home from school. Right? He's in Torah day school. He's in the 6th grade. Came home with a Dvar Torah that I never heard, but I thought it was just an amazing, amazing thing. Right? So it's right Parshas Bereshis, and so and what happened is that that it says when God created the world, right? So it said it created light, and so the oral law says that light that the beginning of your words are light. Okay, so it says a cryptic sentence. Says the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon, one of the great sages, right, who lived and came from Vilna, right in the end of the 1700s. The Vilna Gaon said, "What does that mean?" He says, if you take a look, there are 5 books in the Torah. The light it's referring to is the light of the menorah, right, the candelabra, which actually stands for the oral law. He says the first sentence in the book of Genesis has 7 words. That stands for the 7 arms of the candelabra. The first sentence of the book of Exodus has 11 words. That stands for the amount of balls that were engraved on the menorah. He said the verse in Leviticus, okay, right, the first verse in the book of Leviticus, right, has 22 words. Okay, and that stands for the amount of cups that were on the candelabra. Then the first word, then the first is right. It was 7, 11, 22. The first in Bamidbar, right, has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 15, 16, right, has 18 words, right? The candelabra is 18 handbreadths tall, and the first sentence in the book of Numbers is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11,
Numbers or Deuteronomy?
15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Deuteronomy is 22, because that's the amount of cups that are engraved on the menorah. It says, okay, that's what it means, right? The first few words are light, right? Okay, so it's 7, 11, 22, 18, right? Just like, and you're going like, hold on, like, right? Again, right? Just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of the Torah, right? There's more and more and more and more and more to be learned. So you're going to go ahead and you're right to get a chance. Now we have to peel by layers. Okay, it's compared to the sea, right? The Torah is compared to the sea. Why is it compared to the sea? So there are is that you look at the sea from the surface and the sea looks one way. You go down 10 feet. Different. A different sea. You go down 20 feet, different. Right? Every 10 feet, every 20 feet you go down, the sea looks completely different. Right. So to the Torah, as you go ahead and you keep on going down layer upon layer upon layer, each layer is more sophisticated, is totally different, yet it's all the sea, it's all the Torah.
Trouble fathoming.
Right? Okay, yeah. Okay. Good. So we say upon waking up in the morning, the beginning of wisdom is the awe of God. Reishis Chachma Yiras Adonai. Right? The beginning of wisdom, very important. The beginning of wisdom is the awe of God. Okay? Right? And what that means is that our level of awe of God, right, is the vessel from which we can hold the wisdom. Okay, means that if we don't have a lot of awe of God, there's not a lot of wisdom that we can have, right? Only if we have, right, awe of God, right? The more awe of God, right, the more wisdom we can hold and the more wisdom we can take in, right? But you have to start off, right? You have to understand who God is, right? And the more that we're able to understand, right, what God is all about, so then the more wisdom we are able to go ahead and we're able to hold on in. Now, second of all, which part of the sea has the most water in it?
Depth. The lower.
The lower, right? The part where the floor is the lowest.
Right.
Right? And so the Talmud says, you want to be able to have wisdom, you have to make yourself humble. Right? The more humble you are, the more wisdom you can hold. Right? The deeper the floor, right? The deeper the more wisdom you're able to hold. And that's going ahead and be able to absorb all that wisdom of the Torah, right? You need to go deeper and deeper in. Okay, so now the Torah is not a history book. Don't look for the Torah to be a history book. It is not written in the form of a history book, and in fact, the Torah will skip large swaths of history. Why? Because if they have nothing to teach us, we're not going to talk about them. Right? The Torah is a book, right, to teach us, right, morals and truths, how to act. Right? If you have to go ahead, you have to say, what is the Torah? The Torah is a book of morals and truths. Okay? It's a way how we're supposed to act. Right? You want to know how to act? You want to know what is morally correct? You want to know what's right and how we're supposed to live? You have to. The Torah gives us that information. It's a place of moral truths, morals and truths, how we're supposed to act. Not a history book. Again, you might be able to learn some history, right? But it's really all about morals and truths, right? Learning to teach us, right, the right way. Actually, interesting, I had a guest today I hadn't seen in 10 years, right? He had moved to New York and he came back and says, Rabbi, so I just want to come and thank you. 10 years ago when I was here, you were very welcoming. Considered the formative years. So I said, it's a very nice, beautiful, thank you. What are you up to these days? He said, well, I'm really not on the Torah path. Oh. I said, so I didn't do a good job, huh? So he goes, I said to him, okay. So I said, so how do you decide what's right and wrong? He said, well, I just, kind of figure it out. Because what's true for me is true for me, but not for you. Ooh. I said, multiple truths. I love multiple truths. That's really nice. Multiple truths. I said, so in essence then you're saying anyone can make up what they believe is to be true. I said, in that point in time, if they believe what is true, then that's okay. And he said, yeah. So I said, okay, so then Hitler was right to kill the Jews because that was his truth. Right? I said, you can't have multiple truths, right? There's a truth that exists in this world. Right. That moral truth, right? Morals and truth is what the Torah is all about. And by the way, in fact, I will tell you something fascinating. Let's say there's a conflict between the literal truth and the moral truth. Which one will the Torah write?
The moral truth.
It's a book of morals. Since it's a book of morals, it will write the moral truths. Right? You following? Right? And so therefore you always have to read it through that lens. And don't get sucked into, well, it says this. I said, yeah, it might say this, but that's telling you the moral truth of what happened, not the literal truth. And therefore, right, there are many stories in the Torah, right, when people go ahead, right, from the famous stories, King David and Bathsheba, right, that, people think they know what went on. So you have absolutely no clue what went on with King David and Bathsheba. Zero truth. I said, you have absolutely no idea what went on. I said, oh yeah. I said, whatever you're saying is ridiculous. Just get a life. I'm telling you, there's nothing that you understand anything about that story.
Unless you know Hebrew.
And no, it's not even Hebrew. It's just, there's nothing, you read that story, I said, you have absolutely no clue what really took place.
Meaning that when you read it literally.
Oh, it's literal. Right. It's so literal.
When you read it literal, you say, oh my gosh, he killed somebody, killed a man to have his husband, have his wife. Right? Except there's a few different problems with that. Right? To cover up for his indiscretion. Right. Right? Except it's quite fascinating. Was King David righteous?
Yes.
How do we know he's righteous? Because the book says he was a righteous man, even after the story.
Right.
Do righteous people do this? No. Good. Okay, excellent. I'm glad you got that right. Yeah. Right? Righteous people don't do that. Now, what's fascinating, in Jewish law, let's say somebody has an affair with a woman. So she now has to get divorced from her husband. Yeah. Is she allowed to marry the guy who she had the affair with? No. Right? She's forbidden to him. So would King David be allowed to marry her? No. Right? So therefore you see that it can't be the way you want to read the story. Right. Because he couldn't be with her. Right? Okay, then you go ahead and then more so the prophet comes and says, King David, you're right. You did a terrible story. He gives him this whole thing, right? The guy has 300 sheep, 101 sheep, and he takes his friend's sheep and he slaughters it, right? That's your question. And what does King David say? What should happen to that person?
He has to pay money.
That's not what King David said. King David said he should be killed. Right? Can I ask you a question? If I steal somebody's sheep, what's that called in Hebrew?
Ganeva.
Ganeva is stealing. Oh, Gazela, right? Okay. Now, what's the punishment for that?
Death.
No, absolutely not.
You pay fivefold.
No. You have to pay. It depends. It depends if you steal his sheep and his right and you slaughter it. right? So if it's a sheep, you have to pay 4 times, and an ox, you have to pay 5 times.
Oh, that's
Right? Right, okay, right? So it's a sheep, we talk about sheep. So the punishment is you have to pay back 4 sheep.
Yes.
What King David talking about killing the guy? The guy didn't do anything, he stole. He's a thief, so pay back 4 times. And then the prophet says, King David, that's you. Okay, can I ask you a question? So he says, King David, you're a thief. Is he a thief or is he a philanderer? You read the story, right? He's a philanderer. So the prophet's coming saying you're a bad guy because you're a thief. The whole story makes absolutely no sense. Okay, I just asked you 6 questions on it, and that the story does not hold together at all. So there's only one thing you have to do. You have to go back and have to reread the story and understand what really happened. Okay, but just suffice it to say, what you think is nothing in truth to what happened. Right? Okay? And so and then you have to, why did it write it in such a way that seems to sort of be leading in a bad way? Right? Okay, we'll get to that. That's a whole bit. When we get to the prophets, we'll get to that. Actually, if you come on Wednesday night, we'll know the prophets are right at the beginning, at the end of Samuel 1. You come join us right at 8 o'clock in Orator in the boardroom upstairs. We go ahead, we have that over there. Kind of, we could go talk about that. But anyway, that's what it is. But it's clear that the Torah is here to teach us moral and ethical truth, the proper way to act. That's what the Torah is all about, to teach us the proper way to act. Okay? And so therefore, it is not a history book. So please don't read it as a history book. Number 2. Does anyone know what the word Torah means?
Teacher.
So it's interesting. So the word Torah, the full name of the Torah is actually, it's called Torah's Chaim. Okay? Torah's Chaim is a full name, right? It's the full name of the Torah. And actually the word Torah means instruction manual. Right? It could also moreh, right? Is a teacher, right? Moreh is a teacher. But the word Torah is instruction manual.
And the word or is
okay.
Light.
The Torah's Chaim, it's instruction manual for life. Okay. Somebody once came into my office and said, Rabbi, my life really stinks. I didn't use that word. I used a different word. So I said, really? I said, your life is so terrible. I said, yeah. I said, well, did you ever read the instruction manual for life? He said, no. I said, no wonder why your life stinks. I said, you probably took the oil and put it into the gas tank. You put the gas into the you put the gas into the windshield wiper spritzer. You took the water from that and you put that into where your oil is supposed to go. Of course, your car is not going to operate properly, right? We got a big problem here, right? You get it? Of course, your life stinks. I said, you have to read the instruction manual for life. He said, well, where's the book? I said, I have an extra copy. Right, okay, right? We have a Torah's Chaim, the instruction manual for life. It's labeled the instruction manual for life. You got to read the book. Right? It's pretty simple. Right? You got to read the book. You know what I'm saying, Chana? You got to read the book. Instruction manual for life, that's the way it works. Right? You don't have the instruction manual for life, your life ain't going to go so well. Right? You know, and even if you think it's going so well, that's even worse. Because then you give yourself a lobotomy. You're really not thinking. Right? So it's called the instruction manual for life. Our job in this world is to understand that we have an instruction manual for life, right? Yes. That's what the Torah is all about, and we got to get the instruction manual down pat. You get the instruction manual down pat, life is great. Alrighty, you got that? Instruction manual for life.
So, Rabbi, in another word, God is saying, by essence, I created you and I give you the instruction to follow.
Correct.
But if you or manual of instruction, right. But if you don't follow, you messed up.
Correct. If you don't read the instruction manual, how do you ever think you're going to get it right?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, right? I wouldn't expect to get it right if I didn't read the instruction manual. And by the way, the more sophisticated the machinery is, the more the instruction manuals come with it.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Do you ever see a computer manual? Right. A little watch nowadays comes with a thick little manual. What does a computer come with? Right, they start writing programs, the instruction. When you ever try to fly an F-16, it's a room full of manuals.
Yeah, and then we have a tendency that we can put it together.
Right. We'll figure it. Yeah, we'll figure it. You know, it's so funny. See, now I'm not a computer guy, but my son is a little bit more. And sometimes he'll see me struggling. He says, "Dad, this is how you're supposed to use it." I said, well, thank you, son. He said, well, Dad, if you would have read the instruction manual, it would be much easier. I said, if I had time to read it, I said, but I had to read that instruction manual and the instruction manual for life. I could only read one. I said, I took the one for life. I figured I'll struggle on the phone. Right? But that's what it is, right? They have an instruction manual for life, right? It said, big letters, instruction manual for life, right? Don't forget it, right? Go get it down, go write it, right? You got to read the instruction manual for life. Yes?
For Jews that are going blind, does Masorah have the blind tapes.
Okay,
for the
so you should know
camera?
that there are many great resources out there. By the way, that have a lot of stuff that you can go ahead and that you can listen. Okay, so again, so the Torah is instruction manual for life, right? That's what it's about, right? Kind of figure out what's happening, right? What life is all about. Get it down pat. Okay, so now, what I'd like to do is as follows.
Okay.
Now, how do we know that God wrote the Torah? One of my favorite questions. And how do we know that God wrote the Torah? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you on a little quick journey through the Torah. Okay? Never ever forget what I'm about to tell you. Okay? Whenever you want to change the Torah, just go back to this. Okay? I'm going to give you 4 simple examples. Okay? 4 basic examples. Okay? And how do we know God wrote the Torah? So the first thing is, right? The first thing is very simply, right? When God came, right, to reveal to the Jewish people, right, reveal himself to the Jewish people, Judaism is the only religion in the world that has what we call national revelation. Okay? Every religion in the world is started by somebody waking up in the morning and saying, "Oh, you never believe what happened last night." And we said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, you didn't hear all the banging and screaming and loud noises?" I said, No, I didn't hear any of that. He says, "Well, God came to me last night and delivered a message." I said, "Oh, really?" Right? Okay, and then they go ahead, right? It's always right, and they tell you what message they want to tell you, right? You know, I even think a recent one, right? To think the Mormons, Rabbi John Smith, right? He said, "Yeah, he gave me 2 golden tablets," and we said, "Yeah, where are they?" He said, "Out in the desert," but he took them back. Sorry, too late, you missed them, right? And so, right, so what happens is, right, every religion in the world starts off with one person, right, preferably one man, going ahead, right, that's what they do, right? I think the most, well, I don't think any religion actually has a woman, right, that goes ahead and it says that God came and spoke to me last night, this is the message, and this is what you got, right, and this is a scoop. Now again, did you see it? No. How do you know it's true? He told me it's true. It must be true.
It's a miracle.
Right, he told me it's true. It has to be true. Right? Okay, good. I got another bridge to sell you, by the way, but you probably own it. Okay, right? So, right, what happens is, right, every religion in the world starts off by one person saying, "God came and spoke to me." Okay? There is only one religion in the world that has what we call national revelation.
Public revelation.
That God came and revealed himself to an entire people. And you know, as Jews, 2 Jews, 3 opinions, right? We Jews agree on nothing, right? And yet all 3 million Jews that came out of Mount Sinai, they came out of Egypt, came to Mount Sinai, all said that God came and revealed himself to us, and we heard God talking. So much so, by the way, it's quite fascinating, that all the other religions that came in kind of that copied themselves off Judaism, right? Quite fascinating. When they came and they did that, they came and they came and they copied themselves off of it. They didn't say Judaism was false, because everyone knows Judaism is true. And if you say Judaism is false, they just throw you out. They say the Jews blew it, and therefore they're the new Jews. Right? They come ahead. There's a second book. There's a sequel that you missed. Right? You know, right? They go on. Right? They kind of do all this stuff. Nobody says that the Torah is not from God, because that what's called national revelation. The national revelation. All 3 million Jews heard God say the Torah. Yes.
Here's what you should remember. Individuals can lie. Individuals can be mistaken. But a whole nation can neither unanimously lie nor unanimously be mistaken about a concrete event that they all experienced together.
Right.
So
what this is called national revelation. Okay, national revelation, very important key words. Right? Judaism has what's called national revelation. We got this book as an entire people standing on Mount Sinai. Right? We heard God speak to Moses. Right? God spoke to us, and we heard God speaking to Moses, and we heard then we heard God speak to Moses and speak to us. Right? That's how we know Moses is a prophet. Right? Because we heard God speaking to him. Right? And so therefore we go ahead, and so we have the Torah, right? We got all the commandments, right? And that's where Judaism comes from. What's called national revelation, different than anything else, right? Categorically different than any other religion that exists in this world.
They all copied us.
And they did. They took different pieces, right? And they went and they cut out what they didn't want. Yeah.
Yeah, the New Testament is purely the illustration of
the New Testament. Actually, if you actually stop and think about it,
right.
It actually is quite. It's scary, because the New Testament was written. The version we have, it was written
by a man.
It was written in Council of Nice in year 318, 300 years after Jesus was dead.
Right.
Okay. Right, and old Paul, Peter, whatever, and they're all dead, and right, and so right, they had this, they got together and they made an official copy, right? So it's kind of it's like me telling you. Just imagine what this. I'm just going to give it to you today. What that means. Me telling you, by the way, there was in 1700 there was a guy who was so and so, and he left the whole book and whatever, and we can. It's crazy, right? It's not even that. It's wild. Right, and then you have an Islam saying, right, Muhammad saying you can either believe my book or I'll kill you. It's very convincing, by the way. I'm in. Right, you know what I'm saying? Right, that was their line. So by the time we go ahead, what's called national revelation, we are the only religion that has national revelation. National revelation is one of the cornerstones of being Jewish. That's number one. Number two, on to the Torah. The Torah has what I like to call fingerprints. Okay? Yes. Fingerprints, okay? What I like to call fingerprints. Very important. Who here has seen the movie called Face Off?
What?
Face Off. Right? Who are our favorite movie stars in Face Off? John Travolta and what's it? Nicolas Cage. Very important, okay? Has any of you seen the movie? No. Okay, that's your homework for tonight. Go home and watch a movie. The rabbi said to go and watch a movie.
Netflix or
it's called Face Off. Okay, but I'm gonna tell you the theme of the. I'm gonna tell you the movie. I'm gonna tell you the movie in 30 seconds. Okay, listen up. Okay, I'm not such a good actor as Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, but this is the story. There's a good guy who has a daughter. They're both cops. There's a really evil guy who goes ahead and captures the father, and what he does is he takes the father, and he operates on him. And removes his face. And then he removes his face. And he swaps face and turns himself into the good guy and makes the good guy into the bad guy. And the good guy's daughter is the person who has to track him down.
Oh gosh.
The crescendo of the movie. She's got a gun. And she's got to shoot one of them.
Oh, that's right.
And then, and if she shoots the good guy, right? She shot her father,
right.
And she'll get killed by the bad guy.
Right.
If she shoots the bad guy, everything's okay. And what happened was this bad guy went and learned everything about her father.
Right.
What year he born, social security number, who he married to, everything she knew. Everything he knew. And finally, the father saying, how do I tell my daughter that this is me?
I know.
So he says, you know what? You remember when you were 4 years old and we went to the park and you wanted ice cream and I got you the ice cream with the colored sprinkles? Bang! She shot the other guy. Right? Because she knew then she knew that was her father. Why? Because he gave her information that only her father would know.
On that deeper level.
So when you take a look at a chumash, okay, what we have to do is what information is in here that only God can know.
Right.
Okay, that's simply right, but I call them, those are God's fingerprints. Takes it, sticks it through, right? Goes ahead and he fingerprints, he IDs the Torah, showing that that he is God and that he wrote the Torah. So it gives us things that only God can know. So I'm going to give you a few of them. Okay, so number one. So one of my little favorite ones over here is in Shemitah, the laws of Shemitah. Shemitah is a sabbatical year. This is in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 21. I want you to open up your Chumash. You have it there. Okay, Leviticus chapter 25, right, verse 21. Actually, turn back page 699. We'll start from, verse, top 701. Page 701, top page 701, chapter 25, verse 19. Okay, these are the laws of Shemitah. These are the sabbatical years, right? This is where This is where the Torah says that 6 years in the land of Israel, right, in the land of Israel, you work the land for 6 years. In the 7th year, you go ahead and you don't work. Now, what's the problem if you don't work in the 7th year?
You don't grow any food.
You don't grow any food, and what if you don't grow any food? You starve. Okay, a bit of a problem. Okay, means you're not around for the next year, right? Okay, so this religion is a 6-year and out religion, or 7-year and out religion. Right now, again, what are the plus sides of letting your land lie fallow?
You can learn Torah.
It restores the land. So let me ask you a question. So let's say we were the committee writing this book, and it wasn't God. What would we do?
Rotation.
We would do crop rotation. Say, okay, you know what? Don't work so hard every year. Take a 1/7 of your land, and every year, right? You'll have section A, rest, section B, section C, D, E, F, G, H, and then you start again, right? So that way it works out quite well. Or we'll say, because we want people to be able to study Torah, we'll say, okay, everyone whose last name ends in an A, B, C, they rest in year number 1. D, E, F, they rest in year number 2, right? And you go through and you split up the Jewish people by the alphabet, right? And you give a 1/7 of the Jewish people off every part of the year, and that way they can rest and everyone can do it, right? That would be if me and you were writing this. Okay, but this now is God writing this. God says, no, Epstein, don't go down that route. That's not what you should do. So top of page 701, chapter 25, verse 19. Robert, would you like to read for us?
So start at 19?
Yeah.
The land will give its fruit, and you will eat your fill. You will dwell securely upon it. If you will say, what will we eat in the 7th year? Behold, we will not sow and not gather in our crops.
Right? Okay, what are we going to do? We don't have any food. How are we supposed to live, right? Okay, verse 21. Go ahead.
Okay. I will ordain my blessing for you in the 6th year, and it will yield a crop sufficient for the 3-year period. You will sow in the 8th year, but you will eat from the old crop until the 9th year, until the arrival of its crop. You will eat the old.
So what does God say?
I guarantee it.
I guarantee it. I'm going to give you a bumper crop in year number 6.
Yeah.
Okay, now, by the way, year number 6, the land should be at its weakest. Has been farmed for the last 5 years.
Right.
And yet God says, no. I'm going to give you a bumper crop in year number 6.
Wow.
Okay, and just in case you want to know, even today with all our modern high-tech technology, we can't control rain. Let's go back last year, right? Then we made 48, 52 inches in Houston in 3 days. We don't control rain, we control ditto. You know how much crops we lost in Texas? Right? Even every year we lose tremendous amount of crops in America because we don't control it. And yet, the author of this book says, I will give you a bumper crop in year number 6. That'll be enough for a 3-year period. The reason for a 3-year period is because in the 50th year, you also don't work. So it comes out in year 49, 7 you don't work, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42, 49. In year number 50, that's the Jubilee year, you have 2 years back to back where you don't work. Right, which at that point in time, then, right, you're out of luck.
You're going to starve.
Right, you're going to starve to death. So what happens? So what says the Torah? The Torah says, okay, go ahead, take it, right, 49 to 50, come back, right, and God says, I'm going to give you a 3-year enough for 3 years.
So it's a written guarantee from
God. Guarantee from God. By the way, has anyone ever read any of the New Testament or the Quran or any of those other books? Yeah, and if you've seen anything like that, what do the Christians promise you if you're good?
You go to heaven.
You go to heaven. What happens if you're bad?
You go to hell.
Isn't that quite convenient? Has anyone been to heaven or hell?
No.
Quite convenient, right? But that's where you're going if you guys, right? I mean, and how do you know? Because they say so. It must be true, right? To understand, right? So what happens is you go ahead, right? You have it, right? Torah here says, guarantee. God says, I'm going to give you a bumper crop. So I want to tell you a little interesting story that took place with me. The story took place roughly 17 or 18 years ago. I used to help supervise a spice plant right over here on 35 and 635.
What?
A spice plant. Spice plant. Spices.
Cilantro.
Okay, and so what happened was, we were owned by a nice Greek gentleman, right? And so so I used to go there, check up, make sure everything's okay. We used to walk through it, and one time I was walking through with him, and I said to him, I said, I find it interesting that every spice you have comes from a different part of the world.
Right.
Very interesting.
Very.
He says, Rabbi, I'm going to tell you why. Our spices are only the best. I said, how do you define best? He said, best oils, cleanest. He says, and what happens is that every country has its spice. Like every country has its people, its plant, right? He says it has its spice. And he says, okay, so like they had a ton of black pepper that was from Turkey. Remember that cinnamon was something from Thailand. And he said in Thailand, he says when a baby's born, they plant a cinnamon tree. When he's ready to retire, he cuts on the cinnamon tree. And what he sells the cinnamon tree for, it's enough that he can retire. Very fascinating. Nice. And so it goes ahead. He goes, and so he says, so every place I go, get it. And I said, interesting. I said, and what? He says, I said, what does Israel produce? So he says, Israel produces the best cilantro in the world.
Oh, my
cilantro.
My favorite.
Yes, cilantro. So I said, really? I said, that's amazing. He said, yeah, it's actually very funny. He says, the rabbi told me that next year the cilantro coming out of Israel isn't going to be kosher.
Oh, why?
So I smiled. I said, really? I said, why is that? He says, I don't know. He just told me next year I can't buy it.
Oh. And
now I knew because it was the sabbatical year.
Right.
Okay? So, but I asked him, I said, why is it? He said, I don't know. I said, well, so what did you do? He said, well, my importer, a guy named Schiff out of New York, told me that if I buy cilantro enough for 2 years, he'll warehouse it for free.
Oh, wow.
So I said, great. I said, that's perfect. I said, but let me ask you a question. If you're buying double cilantro, and a lot of people are buying double cilantro, I said, how did Israel produce enough cilantro this year to be able to fill all your orders? He said, not a problem. There was a bumper crop of cilantro in Israel this year. I said, thank you.
Yes.
Tipped my hat, walked out.
You didn't
said,
tell him
that is
about it.
pretty.
You
I didn't say I didn't.
Oh, my gosh.
I walked out.
I teach Torah.
Right. You got it. Right. God says bumper crop year number 6.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know.
Oh,
Crazy
gosh.
story.
Wow.
Okay, so that's one. This is what I call one of God's fingerprints. Okay, you got it. Right. How? Because information only that God can know.
Right.
Okay. Good. Number 2. Okay. Go to Exodus chapter 34, verse 24. Exodus chapter 34, verse 24, page 513. Okay, 513. So what happens is, and actually we just read this recently on the holiday of Sukkot. Okay, there is a commandment that all males are supposed to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. 3 times a year, all males have to go to Jerusalem. Page 513 in your Stone Chumash. Okay, chapter 34 in Exodus, verse 24. And what happens is all the males are supposed to go over to Jerusalem. And what happens when all the males go over to Jerusalem? 3 times a year, right? 3 times a year. What are the 3 times a year?
Pesach,
Shavuos, and Sukkot, right? Passover, Shavuos, holiday giving the Torah, and Sukkot, right? Then the holiday just finished, okay? What's the problem if all the males go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year?
Nobody defends the land.
Nobody did protect the land. What happened? Nobody did protect the land.
The bandits.
If you're gonna, right, you're gonna be attacked. You'd be left the women and children at home,
right?
Because they couldn't make the journey. Right, travel used to be dangerous. I guess it's become dangerous again. But right, but that's right. Travel used to be dangerous, right? And so you wouldn't take your women and kids, right? And so now what happened is, right, you would go ahead, right? And so now, there's a problem with this. Okay, good. So now what happened? So let's just take a look at what it says here. Okay, verse 23 and verse 24. 23 and verse 24. Aaron, do you want to read?
Sure. 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the Lord Adonai, the God of Israel. For I shall banish nations before you and broaden your boundary. No man will covet your land when you go up to appear before Adonai, your God, 3 times a year.
So what do we say in verse 24? No man shall covet your land when you go up to appear before Hashem your God 3 times a year.
Wow.
Money back, guaranteed.
Yeah, pretty good.
So the Talmud says, well, there was once a time when some people started making trouble. As we say in Yiddish, mach and lebedik. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Making trouble. They were going they knew everyone was up in Jerusalem. So you know what happened? God sent some hungry lions to bring order back down to that section of the the place. And after losing a couple people to the lions, they decided that maybe they not a good idea to hang around here. And off they went. You know, Thomas says one time a man went up to Jerusalem and he forgot to lock his doors. He was worried. He said, God's going to take care of me. He came back home, and when he got back home, he saw that a scorpion had wrapped itself around the doorknob of his house. And so, man, to the time that story upon story of story, man, the miracles that took place. Right? Why? Because it says explicitly in the Torah, God says, "I will protect your land. No man shall desire what you have." Okay, so that is.
Can't even write that because we, even with the state-of-the-art equipment and high alert, crack troops with large numbers, we still can't guarantee.
Right, it's amazing. And here is the Torah going ahead and write again what I call another fingerprint. Bam. Okay, number 3. Now this is pretty cool. 3, 4, and 5 are like I personally find to be super duper, really cool, really good stuff. Okay, and this is Leviticus chapter 11. Okay, Leviticus chapter 11, one of my favorite verses over here. Okay, these are the laws of kosher. Okay, so the laws of kosher are as follows. The laws of kosher are a page. It is found on page. Actually, it starts on the bottom page 597. Okay, 597, chapter 11. Right. Okay, chapter 11. Chapter 11, verses. Okay, we'll start from verse 1. Sherry would like to read.
Hashem spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying to them, "Speak to the children of Israel, saying, These are the creatures that you may eat from among all the animals that are upon the earth. Everything among the animals that has a split hoof, which is completely separated into double hooves, and that brings up its cut. That one you may eat."
Okay, so what does it have to have in order to be kosher?
Split hoof
and chew its cut. Very clear. Right? Good. Excellent. Okay, now read for me, please, verse number 4.
"But this is what you shall not eat from among those that bring up their cud, or that have split hooves. The camel, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the hyrax, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the hare, for it brings up its cud, but its hoof is not split. It is unclean to you. And the pig, for its hoof is split, and its hoof is completely separated, but it does not chew its cud. It is unclean to you."
Okay, so now the Torah goes, and after telling you that an animal to be kosher has a split hoof and chews its cud, the Torah says, by the way, there's the camel, the hyrax, and the hare that all chew their cud and don't have a split hoof. Can I ask you a question? Did that add any information I didn't know already?
What's a hyrax?
Hyrax is almost like a badger type animal that lives in Israel. Okay, actually, it's fascinating. When I took a trip to Israel and we actually were out by En Gedi, and then a hyrax appeared. And I actually have it in my phone somewhere. I have actually a picture of the hyrax. It was there. Okay, but the Torah now spends 3 sentences telling you about the hyrax, the hare, and the camel, that they chew their cud but don't have split hooves. But we already know it has to have both. What is the Torah adding?
The Torah is telling us that those are the only animals in that category.
So the Torah is telling you that there are 3 animals in the entire world
that have a split
hoof. No, that chew its cud, but don't have a split hoof. All the other animals have both or none.
The pig has a
Now, by the way, hold on. By the way, right? Everyone agrees the Torah is at least 2,000 years old. Do you know how many different animals have been discovered over the last 2,000 years?
Quite a few thousand.
Quite a bit more.
Millions.
Right.
Quite a bit more.
Animals, right?
Animals.
Yeah, we'll get the fishes. Hold on a minute.
Fish too.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But animals, right?
Yeah.
And how many of them have chewed their cud but don't have split hooves?
Only the 3 that the Torah mentions.
Got it? Nice fingerprint? You got it. Okay, good.
Only these 3.
Only these 3. Next. Then the Torah says, by the way, there's the pig that has split hooves but doesn't chew its cud. The only animal in the world that has a split hoof and doesn't chew its cud.
Isn't that amazing?
We've discovered thousands of animals, and how many of them have a split hoof
Just one.
and
that
doesn't chew its cud?
The pig.
Just the pig.
Just the pig.
Or the wild boar.
Okay?
The wild boar is a pig.
Yeah.
It's a kind of pig.
You want to know fingerprints? You want to know how God wrote the Torah? Right? His fingerprints are all over this place. Then comes my little favorite one. Because, yeah, there might have been aliens and kind of. Now we're going to talk about fishes. A fish, in order to be kosher, what does a fish need to have in order to be kosher? Fins and scales, right? Fins and scales. Okay. Fins and scales. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Fins and scales. How many different categories of fish can there possibly be?
22,000 varieties.
And hold on. How many different categories?
With
categories.
fins.
With fins.
No scales.
No scales.
With fins and scales.
With fins and scales.
And no fins.
No
scales.
fins, no scales, or scales and no fins.
Yeah.
4 categories possibility. The
But
Torah
only one-
says
Good.
you will never find a fish that has scales
And no fins.
that doesn't have fins.
Wow.
That's true.
To date, we found how many different species of fish?
22,000.
Thousands.
Thousands.
22,000.
Okay, 22,000 probably in the last, couple of years.
Yeah. But we're also discovering.
And how many fishes, scales and no fins?
0.
0.
Wow. That's amazing.
You want to know that God wrote the Torah? Fingerprints. Got it? Fingerprints, fingerprints, fingerprints. All over the Torah.
Right.
Want to know how God wrote it? That's how we know.
Okay.
Okay.
I got to give you something. Came from Rabbi Jacobowitz, that speaking, I think the House of Commons or House of Lords, something like that. He said that the Gemara mentions this. The only way that they can kill an animal is to
Hold on.
cut the esophagus.
We didn't get to that.
Are you going to get to that? Go.
That's
Don't steal us.
okay. So now the question is, how do we know that there's an oral law? So besides that, there has to be an oral law, right? I want you to turn to page 1003. Right? Page 1003 is in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 21. Remember, 12:21 is a paladon, right? 1, 2, 2, 1. Okay, we read backwards, we read forwards.
It's a palindrome.
A palindrome. Like race track.
Like dad or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right there, right. Right, so right
1001?
race track
1961.
right race track right is yeah.
Palindrome.
Yeah.
How do you spell the word?
I think PAL I don't ID or palindrome. Yeah. Okay.
I'm missing where you're going. What's palindrome?
And 12:21. It's chapter 12, verse 21.
That's 12.
I'm giving you a way to remember 12:21. Okay, right. Deuteronomy 12:21. Okay, Deuteronomy 12:21 says as follows. We repeat the laws of kosher in Parshas Re'eh.
Yeah.
And in Deuteronomy it says as follows. Right? Now what happens is very fascinating because now we know
What verse, Rabbi?
okay, 12:21. Okay, right? We come to a place and where we know, so the written law we see, right, has all of God's fingerprints. What about the oral law? Right, besides logically there has to be an oral law, right, which is kind of quite I think self-evident. Right? Okay. So it says as follows. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, it's really page 1005. Okay, 12:21. Okay, right. So it says as follows: verse 20 and 21. Verse 20 and 21. Alicia, do you want to read? 12:20. 1005.
When Hashem your God will broaden your boundary as He spoke to you, and you say, I would eat meat, for you will have a desire to eat meat. To your heart's entire desire may you eat meat.
By the way, this was written for Texans. Right? Jewish Texans. Right? You want to eat meat, right? Okay, you're hungry, you want to go ahead, you want to eat meat, right? So then what happens? Right, so go ahead. Verse 21.
If the place where Hashem your God will choose to place His name will be far from you, you may slaughter from your cattle and your flocks that Hashem has given you, as I have commanded you, and you may eat in your cities according to your heart's entire desire.
So what does this say? What does verse 21 say? that if you're hungry and you can't go to the temple to slaughter your animal, you can slaughter wherever you are. You can slaughter in the middle of Texas. How do you slaughter it?
The way God
as I have commanded you.
Yes, there's a special way.
In a special way, as I have commanded you. There's only one little insy-teensy problem.
It's not.
Nowhere in this entire book does it give us instructions on how to slaughter an animal.
That one, the Chumash, the entire
And yet, right?
We know how to do it.
And yet, the Torah says, God says, I've given you instructions. Where are those instructions? Oral law. So you see that the Torah itself makes reference to the oral law.
What track would that be in?
Tractate Chulin.
Oh.
Yeah, it's actually it's a fascinating
Could you
tractate.
spell that for me?
Chulin, Chulin. I'll tell you a cool story about Tractate Chulin, by the way.
Okay.
Just a kind of, we're so spoiled by the amount of books that we have. Growing up in Monsey, Rabbi Wine, is a very famous Rabbi Wine, Rabbi Barrow Wine. His son lived next door to me, and his son lived next door to me, and Rabbi Barrow Wine's father was a rabbi in Europe, and he came to live with his grandson, and his name was Zev Chulinka. Okay, Zev Chulinka.
Ukrainian.
No. Zev was his name,
Uh-huh.
Rabbi Zev Wine, but they called him Zev Chulinka because 100 years ago, rare was it to have a Talmud, a Talmud in an entire city. Right? And printing was expensive. Paper was expensive. It was an expensive proposition.
Mm.
So what did they do? So in the yeshiva that he went to, what they did was they gave every person a job to memorize word for word the entire Talmud. Okay? Entire Talmud with the Talmud and Rashi and Tosas. So anytime you had a question on that tractate, you would go to that person,
And he would be the one.
and he would be the one that would tell you exactly what it
He's
says.
the repository.
He's a repository of that tractate. So he was called Zev Chulinka because he was Zev who memorized the entire Tractate Chulin. Now, just in case you think, what's the big deal? Tractate Chulin happens to be one of the long tractates. I think it's 137 pages. Okay?
Folios.
What? Folios. Yeah, folios in it. And so he was called Zev Chulinka. Right? And so he had memorized the entire Tractate Chulin, word for word, Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos. Right? You went to him when you had a question, and he would read it off to you by heart. And you wanted to know, okay, folio 68b, okay, what? So go ahead and just start reading from the top, straight down. Right? And tell you the entire thing. So that was Zev Chulinka. This is a story of Tractate Chulin. Right? So it says, so here the Torah goes ahead and makes reference clearly to another book, right, which we call the Oral Law. Okay? So folks, God wrote the Torah, we got fingerprints, we got the Oral Law as well, fingerprints, right? This is all very clear. Okay, so we are finished for tonight. What I would like you to do for a little homework, if you would like, is actually there's an introduction in the beginning of the Stone Chumash, which is a very nice introduction. You might just want to read it, peruse it at your thing, and to actually read chapter 1 in Genesis. Okay, next week we'll start with chapter 1, and we're gonna read chapter 1.
On Tuesday?
Next Tuesday. This is Tuesday's class.
Okay.
Okay, so Tuesday, chapter 1, verse 1. If you have anyone who wants to join us, they could go to my Facebook page, and this class will be up there. They can watch it. It actually is something great for couples to go ahead and to come together and to study it. And we'll see you all same bat time, same bat station.